call this meeting to order. My name is Tim Steele. I'm chair of the Enterprise Committee.
Jake Trady, Anchorage Assembly.
Pete Peterson, Anchorage Assembly.
Wellington Assembly.
Mike Abbott, City Manager.
Mark Spafford, Solid Waste Services.
Elby Gray Jackson.
And in the audience we have
Rex Jogla, Anchorage Water and Wastewater Utility.
David Persinger, Anchorage Water Wastewater Utility.
Carrie Shapar, Hines, the clerk's office. Barbara Jones, municipal clerk. Laura Scully, Dutch
All right. So the purpose is just to meet Mark and hear a little bit from him. And so I'll turn it over right now to Mike Abbott and let him say his 2 bits worth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mayor Berkowitz may yet join us. He's on his way back from another engagement. But on his behalf, I'll thank you for the consideration of Mark as the new general manager at the Solid Waste Services Department. We talked to a number of different people after Paul Alcantar resigned about 2 months ago, at the end of February. And Mark has been running the utility as an acting manager on loan from AWWU since mid-March. And during that time, we conducted a consideration of a number of municipal employees and a couple of non-municipal folks that were interested in the position. And out of that, the mayor selected Mark as the strongest candidate, both for the Solid Waste Services program as well as for the municipality generally. So if it's okay with you, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it over to Mark, who can give you a little bit of a description of his background, and then and a little bit about the department, and then I think we'd be glad to turn it over to you guys for questions.
You bet. Go ahead, Mark.
Mark Spafford, happy to be here today. A little bit about myself. I'm from the state of Florida. I was born there. I moved up here when I was 8 years old. Went to elementary school on base on Fort Ridge. I was a military brat. My dad was in the military for 30 years. He retired. We moved to East Anchorage. I graduated from East Anchorage High School.
What year?
20 years ago, actually.
Okay.
So, some of my best memories are going to Bosco's when I was a kid, and buying Amazing Spider-Man 129. No, it's just...
One down, 4 to go.
But, and I went back to Florida for college. I got a master's or bachelor's and master's degree in environmental engineering. I specialized in solid waste management in my graduate school career. Worked on bioreactor landfills. My first job out of college was at a high-end consulting firm in Florida, doing hazardous waste and solid waste management work. I then was able to migrate back to Alaska in 2003. And since then, I've spent the majority of my time working for the Alaska Native Tribal Health Consortium, doing water and sewer projects throughout the state and rural Alaska. Worked for the Denali Commission for a couple of years, so did a lot of work with a bunch of different state and federal agencies. Went back to Florida, kind of in between those stints, and ran the utilities department there for 3 years. Then came back. I've got a couple kids, a couple small boys. Enrolled in Kincaid Elementary. I live in Southwest Anchorage, basically, and came over to work for Brett and Anchorage Water and Wastewater Utility in October of 2013. There I was the Operations and Maintenance Division Director, so if I was still there in that capacity, I probably would have been out on the dig, for the past couple, or at least for last night and today, dealing with that. But
The line's supposed to be, wouldn't have happened.
for whatever reason, it happened after I left, and so you have, but obviously it's in really good hands. So I've been with the municipality for 2 years, and I guess that's 8 months. I was asked or got the opportunity to volunteer for solid waste services. It was always kind of something that was in my background. It was always close to my heart because of the ties I had with some of my first jobs. Kind of the emphasis I had out in college, and frankly, the really kind of turning factor was the fact of the great people challenges that I think are there, some of the opportunities, for the future, stuff that needs to happen. I definitely got excited by the opportunity to be able to run that division, that department. And, yeah, I feel really honored to be sitting here talking with you all this afternoon. And, you know, I appreciate the vote of confidence from, you know, Brett Jokla as well as especially, you know, Mike Abbott and Mayor Berkowitz. So
I do want to mention that the mayor has joined us as well as Assemblyperson Andy Bowski. You're kind of still in the same neighborhood. I mean, you know, waste is waste. And you're dealing with it one way or another.
Sure.
Mr. Mayor, would you like to put your 2 cents worth in?
I just think that we're really fortunate to have someone who's got this level of energy and enthusiasm and willingness to innovate, and he's done a lot to improve morale right now. And we're looking forward to seeing what other kind of great ideas he has to make sure that we can continue to not just provide solid waste services, but lead the way. And I think that Mark is going to bring a lot of credit to this municipality.
Good. Yeah, I talked to Mark this morning and gave him a couple of history points in terms of some of the issues we had last year. And I'm hoping that that there is a trip, that folks, some of the new folks at least get to go out to the landfill and go buy your shop, whether it's a van or something, and see the gas facility out at the landfill. There's, I think there's some opportunity here, and so I'm glad to see somebody new with some energy to take on some of those areas. Other folks, questions or, I'm not done.
Does recycling make sense?
for acreage.
I'm hauling cardboard every month, a van load to recycling, and someone told me that it's better to put it in the dump because it turns into methane.
Well, I guess that depends what you're talking about. I think from the right thing to do standpoint, recycling absolutely makes sense. I think from keeping as much waste or keeping as much material out of the landfill as possible to make room for, you know, future airspace, and if we can recycle that and do something, you know, good with it, whether it's profitable right now or not. I think the big thing is that we need to conserve as much airspace in the landfill, because there's no guarantee that we're gonna be able to find new space or, you know, because who knows what the environment's gonna be like in 50 years when we have to start building a new landfill. Is there gonna be room for it here? Is there gonna house the environmental regulations? How's that world gonna be? So it's better to take care of and conserve what we have right now as much as we can, you know, rather than go for some short term, you know, maybe it's not as financially, it's not as easy to recycle right now as it was, say, a few years ago because of commodities market things, but that's always gonna come back the other way, so. I'll keep doing it. Yeah. It's the right thing to do.
Thank you.
Mr. Trainer.
Mark, have you been out to the methane plant that's there, and are we still flaring off methane that could be utilized to produce electricity?
Yes. Yes to both questions.
Okay.
Do we have is there a new generator on order? I was told they were going to put another one in. The question was,
When?
I don't know that. I know that I've heard talks about that since I've been there. I'm not quite sure of what, the plan is for that right now.
Would you take a look at it and let us know?
Of course.
Because I hate to see us taking a product that produces electricity, just burning it off.
yes, Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as long as we're talking about that situation, I'm sure you've probably been made aware of the disagreement we have with Ecouta Native Corporation about they're wanting 50% of the revenues, or at least some sort of share of them. And just your feeling on that situation, or I know that's probably you're not a part of the legal department, but I'm sure Mike has briefed you on where we are in that situation.
Why don't you tell us what Mike's attitude is?
I think that's a tough question for me to answer these things right now, but it's a,
We're at a-
it's.
Can I interject for just a second? This has been a topic of executive session, so I think, it's probably,
We're not gonna be able to
best-
tell you anything.
Yeah.
It's probably best to, talk generalities rather than a specific piece of litigation before the city.
Okay.
Mark and I talked.
Thank you, I was struggling how to answer that the most.
Mark and I talked this morning, or I guess it was this morning, about a couple of items that we have been involved with in terms of, the recycling question was one, in terms of, and you guys now have a facility out front that does some, I'm not sure how much activity it's really getting. Theory being that we pay a lot when we have somebody, when we sell it to somebody here locally that takes it out and sells it.
We don't sell it to anybody locally. We have to pay them.
Pay them to take it.
We pay for our mixed, stuff, the mixed collection that we get, I think we pay 50 a ton or 45 a ton, something like, yeah, 50 a ton versus the 65 that it would cost us to put it in the landfill from the central transfer station. So it is only marginally less expensive to handle that, and I'm talking about the mixed collection now that either we or Alaska Waste generates. There's slightly different pricing for the stuff that's separated, the stuff that comes from the drop-off facilities.
Well, we are giving the customers the opportunity to separate at the facility, the new facility out front, right?
There's several drop-off locations where disaggregated recycled material can be dropped off. There's one at the landfill, which is kind of I think it's the primary Chugach Eagle River drop-off site. There's one at the central transfer station, and then there's one that the recycling facility operates itself
Do
on
we ship out
Rosewood.
assorted material on our own? Or
We do not.
give back?
All of it goes through somebody else. And they ship out both sorted and unsorted material. It's backhauled out to Seattle.
Thank you. Mark, I want to apologize for being late. I'm sorry. But you may have covered this already, and I just want to make sure that I hear it from you. As you look forward to assuming this position, what do you see as the biggest challenges, and how do you see yourself helping to mitigate those challenges?
I think the biggest challenge right now is gonna be with finding internal staff that are going to be able to take up some of the senior positions for a lot of our senior, spots around the utility staff members there that are, 30 plus years into it. I mean, there's a couple guys out at the landfill, for instance, who have been there 30 plus years, which at this point, I don't really know and I don't know if they have any of the heir apparents and who's gonna train to ultimately take their spot. I think a big challenge for me is going to be training the senior leadership there, i.e. individuals that report to me, to be able to take, my spot when it's time for me to move on, because I think that was maybe one of the things that was lacking in previous administrations. There just wasn't a good, it didn't seem like there was enough of an upward shift of responsibilities, to get more of the senior responsibilities, senior stuff like that spread out to some of the subordinate staff that were really reporting to the director. So I think that's gonna be the most difficult spot, is getting ready for Workforce 2020. And then, of course, there's all the other, are we gonna need rate increases? How are we going to expand services the best way? How do we keep recycling, in the forefront? How do we get people to recycle more, given the current market conditions and things like that? Being able to predict the future is always an issue as well. But I think the most difficult thing for me, in the near term, is going to figure out, organizationally speaking, who is going to take up those spots when those senior people at that utility retire. How do we plan for that?
I appreciate that comment, because what I've found doing HR management for many years now, the sign of a good leader is somebody who looks at transition planning. was big discussion about a potential monofill in that potential area, an old landfill where there's potential contamination. As Director of Solid Waste Services, are you committed to coming out and talking with the Juliet Community Council? I know last night they were very concerned about the number of wells that are out there monitoring and what that means for the community and the well and the water that's in that area. Are you familiar with
Yeah, I wanted to go to that meeting last night, but frankly, it would have been good for me to be there with our senior engineer who was out there, just so I could get up to speed better on, you know, what some of the community concerns were. But unfortunately, I didn't really plan for that until until I heard about it again this week, because I didn't know if I was going to be here. You know, when I was in the interim capacity, my mother-in-law had a bunch of family things that just came up last night, and I wasn't able to attend. But I did speak with our senior engineer about it this morning. And yeah, I mean, that's one of the things we're committed to looking at, is making sure that, I mean, we can address community concerns and, you know, community needs as much as possible. Because frankly, I think that's our number one concern at the utility, other than the safe, you know, conduction of or safe performance of our utilities on a day-to-day basis. But the customer is kind of always, it is the number one thing that we should be most concerned about, and making sure that we're addressing concerns, that when they leave the scale house, they're happy, when they drop off their recyclables, they think that was easy, things of that nature. So that's definitely my number one concern, is making sure that we're taking care of our customers and responding to the assembly questions, whatever it may be.
I appreciate that. One relationship that Juliet Border Community has had with Solid Waste Services is, as there's been issues, obviously the South Fork Community Council and Highland area, we are dramatically impacted by the Highland landfill being right there, because they're community within a mile of it. And so as issues have come out, Solid Waste Services has always been very willing to send somebody to the community council meeting to hear those concerns and react to them. We've had issue on free dump day, you know, with traffic backing up. And over the last 2-3 years, they've significantly mitigated that by pulling the traffic inside the landfill, which I appreciated. And so that was a clear demonstration to me of previous leadership willing to come out, listen, and react. And so I would just hope that that relationship continues. It's been very helpful.
I would see no change in that. If, you know, the only change I would see is potentially improving. So, you know.
On that point, plastic bags along the highway's always been a point of contention.
Question for you, since you're a monopoly, we have an incident of Alaska Waste doing a lot of poaching in your territory. Roll on, roll off. And I'm talking to Paul, the last director over there, and he was planning on trying to get involved in that, to get the crew we need to offer that service, so we don't have the poaching going on. Short of that, is there any way you see we can get money from Alaska Waste from poaching in our area? Because right now I think they get it for nothing.
I don't know, and I know a little bit about it so far. I know that we've conducted a business plan to start looking at basically what it would take to expand the utility, or some different ways that the utility could expand to incorporate roll-off services in our service area. I think one of the, I spoke earlier about it with Tim, but one of those was basically a permit program where, you know, if whoever wanted to come and drop off a roll-off within our mandatory service area, they would pay a permitting fee, and that would pay for the, you know, the administration of the exemptions and potentially, you know, future development of that program, or that program for the solid waste services department. But outside of that, I know that there's a draft of the business plan for that. It's basically at 95%. You know, I'm still waiting to talk to Mike about that, so we can kind of figure out how to move forward. But that's something. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry.
we've looked at it. When Paul Alcantar was here, we commissioned a study to evaluate that possibility. It would require $2 to $3 million of one-time capital investments, both in the equipment that would stay on site versus the equipment it would take to haul it. It would be 2 or 3 people, new positions that would have to be created. And as you suggest, there's somebody already doing the work. Our initial reaction was that we would not charge a franchise fee, for want of a better term. If we're not doing any work, we didn't feel like we should be adding to the cost of the customer. So it's true that by code, it is our territory and our work. But unless we're doing something to add value to that process, we didn't believe it was appropriate to charge something that would almost certainly be passed on directly to the customer. Now, we are and will continue to evaluate the possibility of essentially taking over that business. And there's a variety of transitional mechanisms that could be used. But there are, depending on how you count them, somewhere between 150 and 200 of those operations inside the solid waste service collection area. And it is a lucrative business, and we believe we could do it at or below the cost that is currently being charged by the non-solid waste providers. Alaska Waste is the most common of them, but Ramsey and others are doing some of that work as well. So there's multiple providers that would be affected if we did that.
Just take a look at it and just get the assembly, and let us know what you want to do. If it's one-time money, we can try and figure out how we can appropriate that.
Well, yeah, and I would expect that that would come from the utility, either in debt or equity. And it doesn't all happen in year one. It happens over about a 3 or 4 year time frame. So anyway, it's one of the things we want to consider. We would only do it if we thought we could take advantage of this in a way that benefited the customers. It doesn't seem right that we would move into this business simply, because we could exert sort of that monopoly authority, that governmentally imposed monopoly. So anyway, that is the sort of the general premise that we're working under in that area. And you'll know by the time we're developing the budget or presenting the budget to you for 2017, you'll know what our near-term plans are in that area.
Mark, one other thing, would you go through your positions, identify those that you appoint versus those that are appointed from outside? For example, the last administration, we found that the recycling person was appointed by the mayor at that time, without ever talking to Paul. And that concerns me, because when they're part of solid waste, I expect them to have to report up through Paul or you now. And so I want to make sure that's still not there. Not that I don't like this administration, but for any administration to drop somebody in doesn't work real well for the chain of command for the utility.
Just for my knowledge, if we wanted to contemplate changing the service area for solid waste services, is that a charter amendment, or is that a RCA action, or I don't think we would want to do it, but should we want to do that? What is the process?
I believe it is a simple code change. I believe that the current mandatory collection area is set in code. There are several parts of town that have imposed upon themselves mandatory collection, typically through homeowners associations or CCRs in subdivisions. But the only legally required mandatory collection area is the solid waste service collection area. And that, I believe, is designated through code.
Elvie, did you have something?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I do. First, I want to thank Mark, welcome him, and thank him for his service with AWWU. And my question is this, okay, for several years, Mr. Cheney, Mr. Flynn, myself, and maybe other assembly members were dealing with constituents with issues regarding alley pickup. You may be a little bit familiar with that. And we were really, really successful working with the fire director and his staff, and a lot of meetings and a lot of agreements. We were able to maintain that alley pickup for our constituents. And the issue surfaced again, I don't know, maybe a month or so ago. But my question is, what's your thoughts on that? I'm sure you've heard about it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I mean, I haven't heard anything, you know, bad about the alley pickup. I know, I guess it's a little bit more difficult maybe for the drivers to navigate through those alleys. However, I don't see us changing, any kind of service in that respect.
I think we
Okay,
got
thank
have
you.
a smaller vehicle to help with that process.
If you decide to try to look at canceling alley pickup, call Obie and myself first, so we can get Kevlar for you.
Okay, yeah.
Because I've got some community councils that will butcher anybody that wants to end alley pickup. Isn't that right, Elby?
Yeah, after all of the last 3 years or so, or more than that, of work on this subject, there's no anticipated change in the service model that's in place right now. So there was a lot of compromising done between property owners and the utility.
But you guys did a great job.
Yeah, and the property owners, you know, they know they have to take the cans out of their huts and put the, you know, they have to use the same containers as everybody else and have to make them available for the automated collections. And that was the compromise or the change that the homeowners had to make as a result of that. And in exchange, or in addition, solid waste agreed to go down the alleys and pick them up.
How about the bears up on the, Kermit Hill? Did we, I know we were testing some cans up there, and, what's the status?
We're doing a pilot program this, I guess this bear season, for lack of better ways, this summer, for cans on Government Hill. We're actually in the process, they're in the process of being shipped to the state right now, so we plan on having them deployed by early June. So we've already met with the community council there, told them what the plan is, selected the cart, obviously, showed them how to operate it. We're gonna have handouts, and we're doing a lot of, you know, good community outreach to make sure that we're keeping them abreast of when cans are gonna be deployed, how to use them. And basically, we're gonna use this time frame to, you know, analyze what a cost of service would be for next year. So
They're free in the first year.
Free in the first year.
During the test.
During the pilot program.
They will not be free after that.
Yeah.
And we're trying to figure out how much to charge.
Yeah.
How much of a surcharge to add to the monthly, or whether it's a one-time fee or what have you.
Well, down in the flatlands, when we got the new carts, we got the carts, but if we wanna change it, or we need more or bigger size or something, we got those a fee. Some kind of fee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We actually had a presentation by someone from Fish and Wildlife at our community council meeting last night about bear awareness, and he was saying that the newer bear-proof containers are nowhere near as bear-proof as the older ones were, and it has something to do with the unlocking mechanism. And so I just you probably are aware of that, just want to make sure that you knew that, because he's going around to all the community councils.
Well, you know, I don't know, the gentleman at Fishing Game said that, but there's nothing that's really bear-proof, so to speak. It's more bear-resistant. Yeah, so one of the main things that we need to do is make sure that people know how to operate the lock, because when our automated vehicles go by to pick them up, there's a certain step that they have to take, which is called unblocking the lock, so that way when the can gets lifted up, because normally when it's just sitting by your house or in your garage or wherever it's at, it's supposed to be locked, you know, so a bear can't pry it open. But when they drop it off at the alleyway or for curbside pickup, whatever it is, they have to actually block that lock, so that way when it gets lifted up, it can open by gravity and dump into the truck. Because otherwise, we're not gonna be able to pick it up, so we gotta keep going.
It's mostly for those alley locations,
Yeah.
for the people that don't put their can in a garage or otherwise secure facility. So, as you're going out to your alley to take your can out of its rack and put it where the truck can grab it, you also have to sort of move this latch or block the latch.
Block the lock, yeah.
And then it's available for the pickup. So you actually unlock the can on garbage day, which is one of the reasons why Fish and Game and others aren't crazy about it, because there's that few hours while it's got garbage in it, but before solid waste has picked it up, it's conceivably unprotected or.
And Government Hill it gets picked up, you know, right after 7 a.m. So it's the first stop, first run in the morning, and so And we do that to try to minimize, obviously, the time that there's content, you know, in the bear cans to attract bears.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And on another subject, I remember speaking with your predecessor one time, he was talking to me about being very worried that you were gonna lose your code enforcement officer. And I was wondering if you still have one, and if you could explain to us what exactly she does.
We still have a code enforcement officer. I'm not aware of, I haven't heard since I've been there about any plans about that person going away or anything like that. But basically, like for instance, this time of year, she spends a lot of time, you know, in the Government Hill area, just making sure that people are policing their, you know, their carts appropriately and storing them like they're supposed to and things of that nature. But she spends a lot of time, you know, compliance with dumpsters and you know, excess trash around dumpsters, making sure people are putting in their cans back in secure locations, as best she can, things like that.
If somebody calls in a complaint about overflowing dumpsters inside the solid waste service area, that's the person that responds. There has been a conversation inside the Muni about consolidating the code enforcement function, that most of which lives in the Development Services Department under Jack Frost. Many of you know Jack. That has not yet happened. It's still an idea that remains to be worked on, but it hasn't taken place at this point.
Good synergy for everything.
Yeah, because Jack's the guy that enforces that overflowing dumpster issue outside of the service area. So if you're south of Tudor Road or in Eagle River, Chugach, or anywhere in South Anchorage, and you call in and say that Fourplex's dumpster is overflowing, Jack Frost is his team is the one that responds to that. So there's some merit to the idea, but there are concerns about it as well, and those have not yet been resolved.
Amy, you have a question?
I'll try to keep my comments focused specifically, so I'll make this more of a comment than a question. I was a little taken off guard when I heard that these bear-proof dumpsters are unlocked and left unlocked. I have one at my house, but I threw obviously Alaska waste out in Chugach. Mine never gets unlocked or locked. It has a mechanism that I stick my finger in and twist to get it off. And so I don't ever have to deal with it being unlocked. And I have to say, so my hope is if you have these test case of all these different types of canisters that you're using, if they don't seem to be up to par, I hope we're not prideful. I hope we're willing to step back and say, you know, this isn't a good model. Maybe we should try a different model. So my hope is to really have a critical analysis and maybe look at I've had mine for 3 years now. Before I had it, I had a bear. Don't have a bear now.
Right.
So, and everybody on my street, obviously I live a little further out, but everybody on my street, we had a sow and cub, so everybody got them, and the bears went away. But this type of canister that I've had it for 3 years, not had one problem since I've had it. So I would just kind of maybe evaluate, and I'm sure maybe you already have, evaluate what Alaska Waste uses. And to me, it's worth it. I pay the extra surcharge, but I don't even remember what it is, but I pay the extra surcharge and I just keep it all year long because it's just easy. So I would really evaluate what's already being done in the market.
And this is a test case. We're testing out this can to see if it works. A lot of the reasons why we chose this type of can is because it's what we wanted to avoid was having to have an additional person in the vehicle, the collection vehicle, when it went out to service all the different containers, because right now it's serviced just by one driver, right? So they just go in there, pick up the can, and empties by gravity. This can is also manufactured by the same vendor that we get our cans from now, so it's kind of just an easy, convenient way to get stuff quickly and get a bear-proof container that we were already comfortable with. And yeah, sure, there's an extra step that's involved, but what we're hoping is through, with enough public education, letting people know how to operate the can, that we won't have to select a different can next year and end up with something where we have to have an additional body that's on the vehicle when we're going out to collect, from Government Hill or wherever we have the bear cans located.
That's a valid question. How does solid waste do it?
I think
The waste.
I haven't seen it. They usually come when I'm not there, so I'm not sure if there's one or two guys on the truck. But I actually think there's only one because I was told by somebody who works at the landfill, I was given a phone call saying, Amy, you're not putting can out close enough to the street, can you just please make sure it's straight? So I'm assuming there's only one, that was a year and a half, 2 years ago, so that's why I say I would just, obviously continuity, and the way you're evaluating it, I think is a good way, because if you can keep consistency, long term it'll keep costs down, right?
Yep.
Versus switch, so that makes sense, but if in fact it's not really as effective as you hope, I would say, look at how they're doing. I would just say I've used it for 3 years now, and it's working great for us.
Mr. Reynolds, do you have anything?
I'm good, thanks.
Okay, LV, do you have any other questions?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, yes.
Mr. Steele, I'd like to let you know that Mr. Dunbar asked to be excused. He has guard duty today.
That's not an excuse.
That was Saturday and Sunday.
That's right. Thank you. There's a lot that's going on, a lot of stuff on your plate right now in terms of information and so on and so forth. I would only plead that you keep us in the loop, and I think everybody on this committee is there to help. And I like those that we are too, but two-way communication is always a good measure. I'm glad to see you there. Let's do a round of final questions if there are any. Mike, you want to say anything? Or,
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You want to make a motion from the body that we recommend approval of Mark to be director of solid waste management to the assembly.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Anybody opposed to that? Okay, good. We will make that recommendation to the full assembly.
Thanks very much.
You say that now.
Oh, really? No, I like your background. I like the fact that you've been in the municipal loop here for some time, and those are all good things. Back here in Florida, however you do send your kids to school in West Anchorage, so it can't be all bad.
Thank you.
Without further ado, meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.